Welcome to the golden age of self-expression. The golden age of self-expression is a celebration. Whether we speak, whether we sing, whether we scribble our ideas on a piece of paper, whether we dance, draw, or doodle, there's a platform out there for us where we can spread our ideas far and wide. And the best part is, we don't have to ask anyone for permission. Today, it's my pleasure to have as our guest, Emil Miland. Emil, since 1988, has played the cello for the San Francisco Opera Orchestra. He's an acclaimed soloist, chamber, and orchestral musician, and we have a personal connection. Emil and I went to Alameda High together many moons ago. And I also found out one more thing. My wife, Catherine, learned to play the flute from your father.
Wow.
So we both have a connection with you.
That's pretty neat.
That's pretty good. So
That's
welcome to the golden age of self-expression.
Well, thank you so much, Stephen. It's a pleasure to be here with you and good to see you. I remember, of course, your brother Jim was in my class.
That's right.
And I remember your mother too. So Alameda rocks. We're still rocking.
Alameda's still rocking. And my mom was pleased when I told her we were going to have this conversation because my mom and her cousin Pat have season tickets for the opera. And
great.
They just absolutely love it. So they're going to be the first ones to listen to this.
I am delighted and we'll be so happy to have them back in the Opera House.
That'll be great. That'll be great. But the first thing I want to ask you is just basically how you're doing. It's been a crazy year and a half. What are you doing to stay happy and healthy during the pandemic?
It has been a crazy year and a half for all of us. You know, for people like me, the lights went out overnight with the pandemic. All my employment stopped. Everything just came to a grinding halt immediately. So yeah, that's been a real challenge just on a financial level, on all kinds of levels. You know, here we are as a world concerned about our health, and that can get wearing too. Some people just kept working. In fact, some businesses expanded during the pandemic. That didn't happen to artists. We did, you know, minds far greater than mine, learned how to cope and started doing things like what you're doing right now. I you know, took part in some virtual playing, recording online, but none of it really comes close for me to being in the same room with a colleague and you know, working that way. A lot of teachers did a lot of Zoom teaching and with some good results, but it's not quite the same as, you know, when people gather. And your whole idea of self-expression, well, I think that as humans need to do that. and we find ways of doing it. It's like you said in your introduction. For me, it's been through music, a lot of it. Music's been my only job that I've ever had since growing up in Alameda doing my paper route for the Chronicle. So, you know, that's kind of been it. And when this thing first hit, I was really concerned. I thought, well, maybe it's all over. Maybe I have to become a barista or something. I don't know. But happily, I see things moving forward for music. I really, it's slowly opening up. We've got to be careful with each other and respect each other's health. So that's something I hope we've all kind of learned a little bit something of this last year and a half.
We're all connected, and
So much
respecting everybody else's health is just so important right now.
It's kind of a basic.
It's kind of a basic, right. You also sent me some photos of your garden, and
Oh yes.
I would bet that was pretty therapeutic for you.
You know, my garden has always been gardening's always been a great joy for me. Ever since I was a little kid, and I can get lost in that garden for hours. You know, it's in a garden for me. I am always constantly impressed by the variety of creation, by the colors, by the forms, and in the doing of in gardening itself, there's a certain zen-like quality that is really sustaining to my soul, which I also find in a garden. So I'm just all about music and flowers. There you go, Steve.
Now, does that time in the garden help you with your music?
Yes. You know, everything I experience, I bring to my music. And everything I am comes through my cello when I'm playing. So, yes, you know, seeing a beautiful painting will touch me. Walking along the beach, which I live in Pacifica, and seeing our incredible Pacific Ocean inspires me no end. So it really is, I'm expressing with my music everything I experience. Really.
Interesting. So that really is a good segue to the next question. What does self-expression mean to you? What does it look like to you?
Well, for me, it's essential. In fact, I think it's essential for each one of us to come to know ourselves and to somehow have a place where we feel we are heard, where we can listen to others. I'm really lucky. I've said I'm here and I'm alive many, many times with my cello. I even have record of it, you know. I've made a lot of recordings. And so I feel like I've been pretty well expressed. And it's just for me a joy to know that I'm making a conversation with my listener. First of all, as a musician, without listeners, I'd kind of be lost. And that is kind of what happened during the pandemic, Steve, was that all of a sudden I was here alone with my cello with nowhere to go. You know, we worked very hard at keeping our skills up. Well, a couple of months of that was fine, but then there were no concerts to play. And that got really, really difficult because what artists mirror is the world we live in, the society we live in. And so many things for me personally, professionally, to gotta have a nice, you know, relationship in my life. I used to tell my little dog as long as he had kibble in his bowl and I had a roof over my head, we'd be okay. You know, my needs aren't that great, but when it all stopped and my music kind of stopped too, the uncertainty of our lives day to day got very wearing, I think, for all of us. You know, we kept hearing bad news. And even on whatever side of your political fence you want to be on, the last 5 years were tremendously stressful for America and for our people. So I don't know. I'm just, I think what I came to know, Steve, in all that is that there is certainly, and I mean this, there is no uncertainty in the beauty of music that I serve. I am so grateful. In my daily work, I get to look at minds that are geniuses. I get to strive to bring something to our world that is greater than me and so very beautiful. So it's really has been a lifelong pursuit, and I don't see it stopping anytime soon. As we get older, we might not have the same athleticism, I don't play the same way I did when I was 25. But now that I'm going to be 62, maybe if I'm lucky, I'm saying something different. I have something more to say, or in a different way, or maybe in a more knowing way. And that's all we can hope for. And it's just so nice to be back and making concerts, and planning for them, because I think that's also important in self-expression, is to plan for it. You've got to make things happen. You've got to make sure you're heard. You've got to make sure it's like when you have a friendship with someone very close, you want to make sure that that friend knows you care about them and love them. Because if we don't express these things, they're never heard.
Definitely. Definitely. Now, as long as I can remember, Emil Miland was a celloist. What was, do you have a personal story? Pardon me?
Well, we've known each other for quite a while now.
Quite a while. Is there a personal story on how you just got
well, as you
developed
said,
the interest and the passion?
Yes, there is. Well, I was born into a musical family. As Catherine knows, my dad was a music teacher in Alameda. So I grew up kind of hearing music 24/7, hearing people sing in the house. It was just another part of life for my household growing up. So back in 4th grade, remember in the old days in the public schools, they used to ask you if you wanted to play an instrument. And I started on clarinet. Well, thank God I was having orthodontia at the time, because that only lasted a year.
Okay.
And then they gave me a cello. And we had wonderful teachers in Alameda, Steve. We were blessed in those days with beautiful teachers at our public schools. And one teacher I had was Carlton Hansen. I don't know if you remember Mr. Hansen, but he taught all the strings. And Mr. Hansen got me started on the cello in public schools. I was kind of late. I started private lessons at 13, which is kind of a late start. But because I'd, been singing and around music all my life, it wasn't foreign to me, but I had to get cracking. Well, I got cracking. I was blessed with some wonderful teachers that were very generous. Our teachers are so generous with us as young people. They spend all that time sharing their insight, just showing us the mechanics of how to do things. And I was blessed with some of the best. So I started all that at 13. And then when I was 16 years old, I made my solo debut in front of the San Francisco Symphony. So it was very quick. And before you know it, I was winning competitions and, being allowed scholarships that took me to places like London for a year to study my cello. It was just, I think, some people are born to play baseball. Some people are born to be attorneys. I think I just had a real knack for the cello. And it's something I've always loved. And thankfully, it's still one of my best friends. And that's how it kind of happened. I think it kind of picked me rather than me picking the cello.
Well, I think the happiest people were their avocation or occupation, they mutually pick each other. And maybe the cello picked you and you picked the cello, and it's been a beautiful life together.
It has been. I love our little hometown, but my cello took me all over the world. My cello took me into meeting people that I never would have met otherwise, really incredible human beings. And so it has just really been, when you have me sitting here retrospecting with you, I feel very lucky to have come to know what I do so closely and been at it for so long and still love it. I still love music. I was rehearsing the other day at the opera in Tosca. We're going to open up in Tosca at the opera. I've been at the opera. Let me see if I can.
All right, here you go.
There you go.
I can see it perfectly.
San Francisco Opera Orchestra. I've been there for quite a while. And So there's this part in Tosca where there's like a little offstage group of musicians playing during some dialogue. And the violist in this group was just playing so beautifully. I would look over at her and see this incredible, her name happens to be Joy, but I see this incredible, happy person doing what she does so well. And she played with such artistry that she was leaving the pit and I had to grab her and say, Joy, can I just tell you, I have loved your playing all these years. We've been colleagues for a while. But today when I looked over and heard you and saw you, I just, all of a sudden, when I was talking to her, my tears started welling up in my eyes because it was so beautiful. And we have missed it for so long. So, I get fed these incredible people. I get fed this beauty daily by them. So it's just kind of awesome. I'm awestruck by what I've been allowed to witness. It still just kind of blows me out.
Something just occurred to me.
What's that?
A few years ago, a group of us went to see Figaro at the opera. Yeah, maybe about 3 or 4 years ago.
Uh-huh.
And at the end, I guess the finale, when the lead singer is just really belting it out, we looked at everybody else who was in the opera, and watching him, I felt like for that moment, they had backed away from being part of the opera and they were just sitting there listening to it. And it was absolutely beautiful. And for that moment, they became enthralled by the singing. And that sounds like what happens when you're all together.
It does happen. Just the other day, one of my favorite things at the opera is when the chorus sings, because these are incredible musicians and singers, and they join all their voices together and create this sound which still thrills me every time I hear it. I was talking to a couple of them just yesterday or the day before, and it really is, us human beings, we're very complex. We do a lot of wonderful, kind, incredibly bright and intelligent things. We, as you say, celebrate many things, and they should be celebrated. We can also be really stupid.
It's complicated.
And it's complicated. But when you go to a place like an opera house and you can hear physically how beautiful we are as human beings, when you hear the human voice, some of these cats can really sing beautifully. And just their accomplishment and their ability is truly inspiring. And in a way, comforting, very comforting, because we, especially in the age we live in, Steve, there's so many chances to get bad news. There's so many chances to get bombarded, absolutely bombarded by negativity. I think we have to be careful. We want to live as informed people. We want to be informed, like with this COVID thing, we need to know what's going on. But it's a real rabbit hole to despair sometimes when we get overloaded with the less than noble aspects of being human. So for me, it's like an antidote sometimes. This incredible music that I live with, it lifts me up to a place where eagles fly.
Yeah.
It's quite something, and it's just it's humbling, and also it makes you feel better about yourself.
Excellent. You talked a little bit about your cello taking you around the world. Can you tell us a little bit more about events that happen around the world or experiences?
Well, sure. I mean, it really has taken me all over the world. One of the things, I went to school in Boston. I left the Bay Area when I was a little bit that old. First, I went to London, studied a year there with my cello when I was 18. Then I came back and worked in the San Jose Symphony for 3 years, back in the day. But then, you know, I met a wonderful teacher, Larry Lesser, who wanted me to come work with him in Boston at the New England Conservatory. So I did that. I think I was there for 3 years. But I'm a Westerner. So I came back to California. But one of my jobs right after school was I was a soloist on a cruise line called the Royal Viking Line. And it was a great gig. I would play my cello. I'd play a recital of cello and piano music maybe every third or fourth day, you know, heavy schedule. And, and they paid me to be an entertainer. And I went all over the world. I went up to Alaska many times. I went out to the Pacific Islands, ended up in Tahiti a few times, went to places like Pitcairn Island and, you know, really in the middle of nowhere. Went through Europe, did an Atlantic crossing. It was really a lot of fun. And I saw a lot of amazing things. I never would have been there without my cello. You know, that's the kind of thing that does kind of amaze me. One thing that happened a few years ago, a famous Alameden, Frederica von Stade, Flicka, who's a wonderful mezzo-soprano. Some of your listeners might remember Flicka. Wonderful artist. She's great. And when she never has really retired, but she kind of had to say she was. She's just always active and she still sings so beautifully. But she was kind of making the round saying goodbye. And she had a recital in Carnegie Hall of all places. Her farewell recital to Manhattan. And you know, that woman asked me to come and play for her on that concert. So there I was in Carnegie Hall with Flicka. That certainly took me someplace. That was fun. She was very gracious. That was a really wonderful night to remember. I have been all over with the cello and I like it, but traveling's getting so tricky now. It's just, you know, it's tricky. And with the cello, it's even trickier. So I'm really glad I got to see a lot of our beautiful planet. I'm happy now just to have a walk on the beach.
Right. Well, you definitely have beach in Pacifica, so that's a good thing.
We got great beach in Pacifica, that's right.
Right. So you've talked about your cello taking you around the world. Tell us a little bit about your cello. It's pretty special.
Oh, it is. And again, I'm very lucky to have it. It's kind of a funny story. I went into my cello doctor to get my bow rehaired. Okay. And he says to me, Emil, I've got this really nice old Italian cello and I'd love for you to take it and play on it. And I said, oh, really? Well, what is it? And he told me what the cello was. Then I asked him the price of the cello. And he told me the price of the cello. And I said, oh, no. And I left immediately. So I get home. And my partner, Michael, says, how was your day? I'm telling him about, I went to get my bow rehaired and he tells me about this cello. And he said, well, did you try the cello? I said, no. He said, well, why not? He says, you don't have that opportunity very often. And I said, well, then I told Michael the price of the cello. And he said, well, I still think you should have tried it. So I went back and tried the cello. Well, I'm going to show you the cello. The cello's right here. Can you see my beautiful cello?
Unbelievable. Yeah.
This beautiful cello was made by a man named Giovanni Grancino in Milan, Italy in 1718. So it's, I guess, 304 years old now, or going to be. Where are we? I don't even know where we are anymore. But I remember celebrating its 300th birthday. So I was about to go to Australia to play some chamber music, which is another passion of mine in the music realm of life. Playing in an orchestra is wonderful, but I also love to play smaller groups and also solo recitals. But anyway, I was about to go there, and this cello came up, and I had to leave. So it was like, it involved, you know, it wasn't just like, oh, sure, I'll take it. Here's a check. There was a lot of things that had to happen before I could even think about making this happen. And I sat down behind that cello and played some scales and looked up, and these two guys were looking at me like, what? Oh my God, you know, it's true. It's a beautiful thing. And I never went back to my other cello. I came home from that trip to Australia, and my partner had this cello in the back seat of the car, and he says, I figured out a way to do it. It's not going back. So, you know, these things in life, I'm just glad to have it. And it's after, you know, it's a major deal when you get a fine instrument like this. I was taking it around to people that I could trust, to make sure it was what it was. I mean, you know, you need to get these things just really double checked to make sure it's really the real deal. I took it up to a very fine teacher and fabulous cellist, friend of mine, Bonnie Hampton. I worked with her when she was young. She's a great cellist. Some of her teachers included Pablo Casals. I mean, she just knows her stuff, and she knows instruments. She's had a fine old Italian cello all of her career. So I went up and played it for her, and she was looking at it, and I'm playing it. She said, well, Emil, you sound like it's your voice already. And so we looked at it, and, and then she kind of looked over her shoulder, and she says, and besides, it's only money.
Only money.
It's only money. Well, you know, there's something to that. It's true. Money's a funny thing, and we need it to live, but it is, let's just say I made a really good investment with this cello.
I think so.
And it's just, it's a beautiful instrument. I still can't really believe I have the privilege to play it. You know, it's kind of like when we have these things, I don't own the cello. I mean, I'm playing it now, but this thing is over 300 years old. It's going to go long time after me, I pray, you know, that someone else will have the joy of playing this and taking care of it. Something happened to me during the pandemic that was very difficult. I lost my dog.
Oh.
I had a little dog that was my best friend, little Diller. In fact, my garden is named Diller Park. Okay. So he was just a great little dog, and we went through a lot of life's trials and tribulations together. And I bring that up because, you know, with our pets, it's not like we own our pets. I didn't own little Diller. I was his guardian. I took care of Diller. I love being with Diller. But, you know, I didn't own Diller. I don't own this cello. I love being with it. I'll be its guardian. I'll take that on. But, you know, some of these things in life, we just, we really are just witnessing it and not really owning it. It's not, you know. So I feel the cello, again, kind of, I think, found its way to me, and I just kind of had to make it happen. This cello, this particular old cello, I wasn't looking to buy a new cello, Steve. I had a fine old French instrument that I had recorded on and concertized on for years, and people always loved its sound. But now with this cello, that's all they can talk about is the sound of this thing. It's almost like bigger than me. So that's kind of cool.
Great. So opera is part of the year. What other activities do you do when it's not opera season?
Oh, with my cello and all. Well, I'm very fortunate. You know, one of the things I've done in my career is I've been allowed to meet many composers. And Well, okay, one fun thing, and it ties in with the cello too. A recent job was, your listeners might know the name Gordon Getty. He is a man here in San Francisco who has been an incredible patron to the arts, but he also is a composer. He loves music. This man loves music more than a lot of musicians. And he wrote an opera based on Goodbye, Mr. Chips. And I'm playing in the soundtrack. And in the which they've made a film of this. In the film of this opera, Mrs. Chips plays the cello. And they used my old cello for the movie, and I'm playing on the soundtrack. So my old pal Nico, that's the name of this cello, Nico, is going to have a star on Hollywood's Walk of Fame.
Very impressive.
Yes, it's a high-class prop. Let me tell you, high-class prop. But I do recordings. Chamber music, I've mentioned, is a real passion of mine. These and those your listeners might know that's classical music like string quartets, piano trios. One composer who's a wonderful composer, David Conti, he's the head of composition at the conservatory here in San Francisco, recently wrote a duo for violin and cello for me and Kay Stern. Kay Stern's an incredible violinist. She's concertmaster at the opera. She's just great. So, every now and then these things come up that are just really cool projects. And that's what I do when I'm not at the opera. I try to keep my music alive with these other things. But, there's also a time to stay quiet. There's also a time to get away from it, not self-expression so much, but when you're putting out a lot, you have to find time to restore yourself. Because we're all running around so much these days, so quickly, so many commitments, so many responsibilities, so little time. And that gets old. And for me, the older I get, the less I like that frantic kind of trying to meet life's challenges. So again, my music, when I sit down, I still have to practice by myself. I practice my scales. A lot of it is, kind of grounding work, kind of work that allows me to go out on a stage and play. I need to have that quiet time. I need to make sure I'm doing what I'm doing. And that just takes time. So there's no rushing it, Does that make sense?
Makes total sense.
Okay.
So what is next on your bucket list?
Wow. Well, a few months ago, I would have said just to give somebody a hug would be pretty nice.
That would be good.
Little things. And I do think my bucket list, as it were, maybe has changed over the last year and a half. Like I said, travel was always something. I'd like to see Paris again, maybe, because it's such an incredible city. I think I'm going to get another dog. That's on my bucket list. I needed a little bit of time there, a little bit of space, but I look at people with their dogs and they always look happier than the other ones. So, I want a little friend. Bucket list. That sometimes to me can mean what bulbs am I going to plant this fall? I'd sure like to dance in the rain this winter, wouldn't you?
Now, I'd like some rain.
I'd like
if we
some
could dance
rain.
in it, that would be terrific. Yeah.
When we were growing up, this change has happened very quickly.
It really has.
And people think there's no such thing as climate change. They're just living under a rock. When you and I were growing up in Alameda, even in California, we had seasons. We had rain you could count on. And it's just so nutty now. None of these fires that we have now, Steve. That's kind of a change I hate seeing. And so I really hope that we can turn things around. I hope we can. I hope we have, you know, a chance to do that, because I look at young people and I want them to know a beautiful planet.
Right.
I want them to be able to live their lives as happily and healthfully as possible. So we have a lot to do. We got lots to do.
There definitely is a lot to do, but just enjoy life and be grateful.
Exactly. And if there's lots to do, but in the way, you better stop and smell the roses.
That's right. And
right?
You have them.
I've been lucky.
You've been lucky. You've been lucky. Well, thanks a lot for being on the show. I just really appreciate this conversation.
Well, so do I. And thank you for all that you're doing. Look at you. You're being self-expressive by creating these podcasts. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. This has been a labor of love for me. And I also wanted to ask you to tell us a little bit about Tosca, which is coming up.
It is indeed. Well, it's a beautiful opera by Puccini. The cast that we have is beautiful, first rate. Michael Fabiano is the tenor lead, but the woman playing Tosca, Eileen Perez, it's her first time singing Tosca. She's perfect. She's the best Tosca I've heard. And I'm getting old and I've heard a lot of them.
You've heard a lot of them.
So, I've heard a lot of them. It is, I think the reason that the opera decided to present Tosca first was apparently it was the first opera to be presented in the opera house or after an earthquake or something. It has special connotations to the company I work for. And it is a beautiful opera. The people, when I joined the company, we would do 11 productions in the fall. And this year, because of the way things have pandemicked out, we are doing 3 operas and a total of 16 performances. We used to do that in about 2 weeks. So don't get me wrong, I am grateful but with opera, there's so many moving parts, and with an infectious disease, you've got so many people congregating. And in an opera pit, social distancing is kind of challenging. So we're all doing our best. And I think, we're all, like you said, there's a new thing coming every couple weeks. But I'm hopeful that people will be able to come to our beautiful opera house, which is our opera house. Just being in the building is special. And I'm hoping they can come hear this because it's a wonderful production. Just glorious singing. The music's great. The other operas we're going to do this fall, I guess, is Mozart, Marriage of Figaro, and Beethoven's Fidelio. Another thing that's very exciting, Steve, is we have a new music director, Eunsun Kim. And she is fabulous. Great conductor. We first came to know her, your mom might remember Rusalka. We did Rusalka not long ago. Well, when we were open last, and it was so beautiful, so incredible. Anyway, the company signed her on as our new music director, and in rehearsal, she's just so talented and bright, and I want to play well. How can I not want to play well for someone that says to me that the orchestra is her instrument? So, well, heck, I'll let her have a pretty instrument. I'll give her the best instrument I can give her. She really is great. I admire her approach, and I think she's going to do wonderful things for San Francisco Opera.
My takeaway from this is the opera is the ultimate in teamwork.
Yes. Oh, you are so correct. It is like, I'm amazed. And I've been there since '88. There's so many people working in different departments. There have been people there just as long as me that maybe I've seen twice. I mean, we all kind of do our own thing. Right. So many moving parts. And when it comes together, and when it comes, nothing worse than bad opera. But when opera is good and it all comes together, it is, I think, perhaps the highest art form. It has everything. So I'm a fan.
I hope so. That's fantastic. I am too. So anyway, well, it was great having you. And I think I can speak for Emil. Thank you, everybody who watched and listened today. I hope you really enjoyed the show. And we're going to keep doing this. We're going to do another one next week. If you'd like to know more about what we do, please go to our website at productivediscourse.home.blog. At the website, you can find out everything we do and how you can contact me if you'd like me to speak at your service club, community organization, religious group, or Toastmasters group. As I said, we'll be back again next week. But in the meantime, please like, share, comment, and subscribe so this message can go far and wide. And we'll find that shining needle of common ground in that haystack of fear.